Welcome to the world's #1 trial lawyer podcast, where we have difficult discussions where we lift people up and we're focused on the profession, not the ego. And we are blessed today to have joining Philip Millar and Tal Chuck, 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐒𝐜𝐢𝐞𝐳𝐜, a legend, discovered and undiscovered in many legal worlds, but certainly somebody who is changing the legal world. And we look forward to talking about some interesting, difficult, and controversial topics, as well as highlighting her amazing accomplishments in the field of soft tissue injuries and whiplash law, which I think is something that's not gotten enough attention in the plaintiff personal injury world because everybody's focusing on the big cases. But 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐒𝐜𝐢𝐞𝐳𝐜 who has changed the way these cases are run, and I think it's going to be very beneficial to the listeners. Maybe rather than me speak for you, maybe 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐒𝐜𝐢𝐞𝐳𝐜 give a little introduction to the trial lawyers out there who are looking for guidance and what you bring to the table.
So guys, I'm 𝐀𝐫𝐿𝐴𝐽𝐒𝐳. I'm in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I've been here 35 years practicing. Started like with court-appointed cases and, like no help, no one to talk to, like, shot out of a cannon into the courtroom doing, little criminal defense cases and things that I just wasn't. I thought I was going to be doing some business law and doing some MBA stuff, and instead once I started this, I really loved it, and then wanted to make a living. I didn't. We would laugh. I got the $100. We would laugh. We got those $100 checks. We would do the happy check dance. That's how poor we were getting started when those checks came in. And then, I was lucky my dad came and he started doing workers' comp and Social Security. So I did work until he freed me up and could help me, give me some relief so I could start doing some personal injury cases. And so, and then I discovered like a whole new world of, doctors who say nobody's hurt, and I was like, oh my God, like Harvard trained guy, not hurt, everybody gets better, and then it set me on a journey to learn. And originally I started doing I did the medicine, but I did Jerry Spence's college, and then I did all this medicine that I learned. And you have to go all these conferences, right? It's the conference circuit, whether it's the medical or the legal, and and you get nuggets, you get help a little bit, and then so I did all that, and then where I met Chuck was at a thing, the Trojan Horse, is where you kind of got on your feet, got some real practice and some structuring that really felt good, and now here I am. I just stumbled into this. I got a case. I'd done the brain injury stuff when it was early and young, and then a lot of people were doing those then. And then I just took what was coming in the door, wasn't doing a lot of big advertising. And I got a woman who came to me, and she had this horrible injury and then all this pain. And, there's like just a little bit of damage to her car. But she had like a cyst in the middle of her spinal cord, and she was in a lot of pain. And I went to see the neurosurgeon at VCU, which is right here in Richmond, big, Medical College of Virginia. And we're like, how did this happen? I don't know. And they couldn't help me.
Well, we're going to get into the conference circuit for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We welcome you to the tribe of the Justice College, which is ego-free, purpose-driven lawyers who are trying to reach out and help people who are isolated from mentorship and from people who can share their stories honestly and show vulnerability. And I think you're somebody who has grown through experience, and now I love that you've got your wings, a little later than others, but you've got them in a beautiful way. And so I wanted to talk with the group because we kind of all met on this trial conference circuit. And I think we all have different experiences and opinions on it. But, Tal Chuck, Charles, I met him on a circuit. I met you on a circuit. And I think what we're doing is finding people who we align with in terms of being good humans. I wanted maybe Charles to introduce what he's seeing on the trial circuit and what you're seeing on this conference circuit, Leela, and how we might improve it or fill a gap that could be missing.
I think we're seeing a bunch of celebrities beating their chest on the circuit, and there's not a lot of concrete strategies and complex thinking that's going on and being taught. And it's always bothered me since I came out of law school, because I was looking for somebody to teach me what I was supposed to be doing, and you just don't find it on the circuits. You just see a bunch of I've had $100 million verdict, and I'm great, and all this other crap. And like one of my mentors used to say, when you see these people talking about their verdicts, he say, you know how to win a $10 million verdict? Take a $50 million case to trial. It's the easiest way. And it's true. And you see that all the time. Or you see people that talk about, they got this amazing verdict off of this case, and you dig into the case more, and it's like, well, the defendant driver was drunk and he lied the whole time. It's like, of course you got that verdict. A first-year law school student could get that verdict. But we care more about numbers than we care about substance, and that's been a huge problem long before this podcast, and long before we started going to all these seminars. And so I think Philip and I got together and said, let's just talk about content and how good people are actually going about making great cases, and what it takes to be a good lawyer and dig into the cases, just like what you were describing earlier, Leela, about this case with a little bit of damage to the car and a client that's just going crazy about the damage. And instead of just saying, they're a hypochondriac, or they're just lying, or they're crazy, you actually dig into the case and get a great result. And I think we could all learn about how you dug into that case, and there's lessons within that for all of us.
I was going to ask Leela to expand on your experience, because what I found in the trial lawyer training conference circuit that has a parallel to law school is it's kind of scarcity. It has a scarcity mentality rather than an abundance mentality. And what happens, I think a lot of good people go into law, and then law school turns them into people who are scarcity minded, risk adverse, competitive. They're not lifting each other up or growing as deep humans. And then what happens is you go into becoming a trial lawyer, and now the same scarcity exists. There's no cases. We got to fight. Who's doing this? Who's bragging? It's like, and then that insecurity that kind of is fostered in law school carries out into practice, and it restricts the development. And then so these lawyers who want to be better are going to these conferences, but it's kind of the same principle. There's some egoistic person talking about a big case, and you're supposed to get better just by hanging around them. I think, Leela, we had a lot of really deep conversations about the kind of search we're on when we go to these conferences. What's your experience?
Well, I've been on a journey of learning and searching and going to these conferences and hoping that I get something concrete that really helps. And like I said, I get nuggets, Rex Paris will talk. I love Rex, and he's gotten. What's funny is that you said I came to it late. It's funny is Rex told me it wasn't until he got to be my age that it finally all came together for him, and so it made me feel better recently. I'm like, oh yeah, now I see it. I'm getting like the 30,000 foot view, and done all this, and like now all the training that I've done, all the nuggets, all the books, all the things have made it so now everything makes sense, and everything's starting to be easy and feel good, and I'm enjoying practice. Like I wanted to get out. It's kind of why I started the soft tissue thing. Is like I'm going to teach people how to do this, and I won't have to do the daily grind, and but then I literally could not get these lawyers to talk to me. Like they were like, oh, you little girl, like you don't really know, what I mean? Like, and I don't have. Literally, people with personal injury practices tell me, oh, I don't have those cases. And finally, I was just like, okay, I can't do this. I'm going to just go do my thing. And now I realize I'm just going to lead by example and, and share this information. So, because right now, what we have out there isn't great. And what you guys are doing, and I'll tell you, the one person that is really doing good stuff is Sari De Lamont. She runs the, Hostage to Heroes group, and during COVID, she kind of, got a crew together and did trainings and, and then doing everything by Zoom. And now I joined it, but I didn't really spend a lot of time on it. I spent time on it this year, and oh my God, what a gift from the universe, because like her stuff is amazing. So now, like once they plug that finally in with the medicine I know, boom, things are rocking and rolling, and it's
I
fun.
think the reason why we're chatting about this, I don't know how many of our listeners have gone to these conferences, but you hear about them, the National Trial Lawyers Association, the Trial Lawyers University. They're all out there. They cost $1,000. And so why do you go there? Like Charles, why does a young lawyer or a new lawyer go there? And are they getting what they think they're getting? And what is the gap that we kind of want to fill?
I mean, I think you see two types of people that go out there. One is for the networking. I mean, it's nice to just be around people that are trying to do the right thing and are trying to get better. But I think there's also a bit of desperation in like, I don't know what to do. Like we get cases in and we think there's more there, but we just don't know what to do. I see that a lot with young lawyers. And then, I think some people are looking for like a silver bullet. It's like, give me something that's just going to change my life. And it's like, well, you're not going to get there in a weekend or a 2-day seminar or a 1-day seminar of getting some nugget that some celebrity has used to make $100 million and you're going to go and repeat it. It just doesn't happen. And that message doesn't get out enough of how much work it takes and how much effort it takes to practice and get better. And Leila, when we met, we were at a program that, like you said, was getting people on their feet and teaching people how to practice, which is why I loved it. And I loved teaching at that program, was because people were hungry and we were giving them concrete tools for like, okay, if you really want to get better at public speaking, here's how you do it. You stand like this, you look this way, you tell stories in this way, and then you go out and practice and you do it over and over and over, and then you get better at speaking. That message does not get told at these conferences as much as it should.
Right.
Instead, it's a bunch of marketing and a bunch of business stuff and a bunch of this is how you take a deposition. But there's not really any breakdown in like what you're actually doing to take that deposition. It's more chest beating.
The way you describe it, it's almost like a festival or a conference of proposed shortcuts, like psychological shortcuts. Get this software, it'll make it easier.
Right.
Buy this advertising, it'll make it easier.
Make this demand. If you do this demand, then they're going to pay you.
Oh yeah,
What are you talking about?
And nobody wants to sell that it's actually hard because people want the shortcut, and so they pay for the shortcut. And
my favorite guys is the person that gets on the listserv and says, "Hey, I've got a corporate rep tomorrow, or I've got a defendant driver depo tomorrow. Do you have an outline for a deposition of a corporate rep or a defendant driver?" And it's like, no, we don't. Not one that fits for you. Like, do the work and figure it out.
That's awesome. You should keep some of those. You should like take pictures of some of those posts
they're all over the place, right, Leila, on the listservs.
But you know what I get?
Everybody's chasing, and they're so busy grinding, and then like my brother would say, shucking that oyster, getting the meat and moving on. That they can't think about anything else, and they're just because they're trying to get it all done, and there's just not enough time.
And there's no judgment, because when I went to those things, like I'd go to the talk and I'd write down like 5 points. So what does John Romano say? Or what does Rick say? Or what does, but they don't coalesce really into a system. They're interesting points, but I was never really organized, or I never really had a system. And that's what I kind of like about what we're trying to share here is this case structuring system at the Justice College that actually gives you a kind of a plan just from the start to the finish that helps lawyers.
You know what really was, I love your case structure, Chuck. It does work. The way you guys taught it was very, it was hard for me because I'm a visual person, and it just really, because you guys didn't want to hand it out, remember? And I was like, I need, what I mean? So anyhow, so that was a challenge, but I got over it. And then what really, the last thing, that is the voir dire, doing voir dire with, doing it as a, what do they call it? I had mold exposure, so bear with me. It's the
scripts, Leila.
Yeah, but doing the voir dire without basically not asking them about themselves. You know what I mean? Doing it as a doing it that way, I guess, which is like maybe a West Coast thing. I did that back on August 1st. It was so fun. It was so freeing. I didn't spend a lot of time worrying about who these people were, just went in and we talked about the principles of the case, and everybody could, that was like this, like a conversation that we could all enjoy and get behind and go, yeah, that makes sense. And then, you know, so
So
that's what really was the final thing.
well, and that's great. And let me explain what we do with voir dire is we do it more inclusive voir dire,
Yeah,
trying to include.
yeah, inclusive, right? That's,
For,
sorry, I couldn't remember the word. Excuse me.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
sorry. Yeah.
Inclusive versus exclusive. In like Mitnick in Florida teaches an exclusive voir dire. It's how do you identify people to strike immediately, but that works in Florida because Florida's law for voir dire is if the panel member admits that one side may be starting a half step behind the other, then they're immediately struck for cause. We don't have that law in Texas. And they sure as hell don't have that law in California and a lot of other states. So if you're not set up like Florida's voir dire law to be able to strike people for cause that easily, then doing an exclusive voir dire just pisses everybody off in the room. And why would you do that? And so what we teach is more of an inclusive voir dire with exclusive parts in the middle of it to identify and strike people, but it's sandwiched between a beginning that is more inclusive and an end that is more inclusive that builds a tribe of like-minded people to say, hey, we're all alike in thinking that what they did is wrong. And if we prove what they did is wrong and they knew it was wrong and hurt somebody, are you on board for holding them accountable for that? And that's like, join a group. That should be voir dire 101.
Right.
But it's not.
Exactly. Well, and that, I finally did that in a way that really felt good. And so what's funny is I bet you take the stuff that I've done and marry it a little bit with yours to sprinkle in some stuff, and it would, you know what I mean, be even better. And that's the thing about, like, you know, having contact with like different groups and different things. It seems like then you can get a synergy that works for you. But you know, so.
I think, Leila, one of the things when we met that I had, when I was doing a little bit of kind of like advising with your project, I think it relates to what Charles was doing back in the trial structure days as well, is that like trial structure was teaching but keeping everything close hold. It's a phrase we use in the military. It's close hold. Like, we're going to give you a little bit, but we're not going to actually get, you know, and it's a scarcity mentality, and there was good material there, but that kind of prevented it from growing into something that's more useful. And so what Charles has done now in the Justice College is like flush this out so that we can share it, because you know, people need help to do this. But the tendency that I was trying to share with some other young lawyers I was talking to is you can just constantly be chasing this solution, right? And so you're just always going to a conference, you know, as opposed to realizing, okay, I need to know what the first principles are and then do the work and then share them and teach them. And I love that, you know, through teaching, we actually learn a lot more from our students' experience to then improve what we're doing. And when I was talking with you, Leila, in the past, is I saw such amazing passion in you. It's just, and I felt like you were chasing all of these conferences and listening to all these men. I'm like, you got it, sister. Like, just, you know, invest in what you're doing. And over the last 2-3 years, I've seen you don't need the validation of these conference people. You're just building your own world. And just as a shout out, before we'll move on at some point, but when we went to this conference, TLU conference out in LA, when you spoke that one time, I remember watching these people speak all the time. And then when you got up there and told like a real story about your personal growth that was authentic, it almost made a lot of men in the audience. There were some of the Hollywoods there who were kind of like, all right, well, I could see them shrink a little bit because they weren't comfortable with, you know, how well you first of all, you were just speaking amazing. But also in terms of being raw, you could see that the conference didn't really resonate with it that much. It wasn't fake. I think there's a lot of fake humility at these conferences where people stand up and they know how to tell a tearjerker story, or, you know what I mean? But not that real raw, that energy that you've built investing in yourself. I think that's amazing. But what was it like when you tried to break into the conference, to give the conference circuit, to give talks and all?
Like sort of the redheaded stepchild of, you know, like, no, we want we want somebody who's a rock star in the big cases, you know what I mean? Like little girl, you know what I mean? Like, you know, you keep chasing, you know? And my thing is, now I'm like, that is not what we need to be doing. Like, yeah, so that's, and I haven't gone to any conferences since the last one. I was like, I just don't need to be there. There's nothing there for me right this minute, you know? And
You
the
know what?
next
It's
time
kind
I
of like
go,
going to a cliquey high school dance that you feel like you have to go to and you don't like, as opposed to going and hanging out with 4 friends
right,
and just having a great time on some patio chairs. You know what I mean? Like, you want to be around, but those group settings can almost, even though everybody has a smile on their face, kind of remind you that you're not there, and it's not as healthy as what we want
right,
to make.
right. It didn't feel well. It didn't feel good.
Hmm.
But so that's why I'm like, and I don't need to call and beg to be a speaker. I'm like, it'll all come together.
Because they were not interested in actually helping the majority of lawyers. They're interested in headlines. So it's like it shows the shallowness of the profession when you see that every conference is $32 million verdict, $12 million verdict. Like, if that's all that we can focus on, it's not talking about the humanity that most plaintiff personal injury lawyers have smaller cases that they're struggling with to succeed, to win,
I
and they
call
need
it,
help there.
sorry, I was going to say, I call it the daily grind. I mean, like,
Mhm.
80% of these cases are, maybe it's a simple whiplash case. They all come through the door and, they get settled and, no one fights for these people. And, but that's where all the work is. Like, most of the work is there. And, maybe 20% are those great big cases. And everybody's advertising to get those. And my thought is, focus on what you got, get really good at that. If you get really good at that, then guess what comes through the door? Moby Dick. I
Mhm.
mean, like, I'm a testament to that. I've got those cases now because
Mhm.
people know Leela's going to fight. She'll do a good job. And so now, like, I got all this work.
It goes
So,
back to Charles' point that if you can win those tough, smaller cases, anybody can win, the whale that comes through the door, or get something. But Charles, what do you see about how we can improve this?
I mean, I think Leela's on point with that. Is that she learned how to put in a lot of work on cases that other people wouldn't put work in, and I hear that story from successful lawyers all the time. Is that early in their career, they had some case and some cause that they dug into, and they learned how to dig into a case, and then they applied that work ethic to all of the other cases, and the value keeps rising. And it's not sexy. It's like when I was playing basketball, it was like everybody's looking for that silver bullet of how do I jump higher. It's like you work and you work at it hard, and then once you figure out how to do that, you apply that to all of the other skills that you need to be a trial lawyer or play basketball or be in the military or whatever it is. In that work ethic, in that desire to win and the desire to represent your client the best way you can is the ultimate lesson. And then you can pick up lessons from how to apply that through hopefully what we're doing. And I don't think that's as apparent in the conference circuit. Like, you don't hear the guys saying, like, sorry, you got to grind on soft tissue cases for 5, 7, 10 years before you start figuring out how to do a wrongful death case. And yes, once you get to wrongful death cases, you're going to make a ton more money because while they're not easier, they're worth a lot more money. But you got to put in the work on the small ones. And I tell my associates all the time is like, we got to learn how to do it on these smaller cases so you can apply it when Moby Dick walks in the door. You think you're just going to magically wake up one day on a wrongful death case and know how to do the investigation and know how to ask all the questions? No way. Do it on the other cases and then you'll apply it to the big ones.
but isn't that what those advertising firms are doing? Like, hey, you know what I mean? Like, just if we can sift through enough, and I pick up the folks, the ones like the nuggets that they get rid of, and then later they go, we turned that down. Like, yeah, you turned that down. Yeah,
Yep.
and so
Beautiful. Well, we're gonna change a little bit of the dynamic of the trial education system by giving away the most valuable stuff to the people who want it and who want to learn, and then create a community. And I think that leads into the next topic that we wanted to get into, because I think the perspective that founded the Justice College was building a community, and a community without identity other than a community with shared values. Bringing Leela on is important to me because I've seen your growth so long, but to talk about the challenges that exist in the trial lawyer community as a female. And we're going to have a good conversation about it. And the reason I want to have this conversation is, like, I might come from a military background, but I like lifting people up and having difficult conversations and forming bonds across identities. And I think, but even before we started off, maybe I'll just share, before we went live, Leela was reading an inspirational product that she subscribes to this program. And I kind of made light of it, right? And then, so this is what happens in America right now. Is, oh, men, you do this, women, we do this, and it becomes an us versus them, right? I can look back and say, okay, it's insensitive to make light of somebody sharing something personal without understanding that from the person sharing its perspective, why they're sharing it. But then Leela actually responded negatively to me, kind of making a joke about it, but she didn't understand that where I come from as a male, right, is that we always rib our friends when they do something, right? And if a guy says something kind, you're like, don't be weak. You know what I mean? Like, but that's a sign of us actually loving each other. But if you can't have a conversation because everybody is just putting people in boxes, Trump, Harris, liberal, conservative, this, that, man, woman, right? Nobody is actually focusing on we're good people. How do we lift each other up? And I just wanted to share that because it's personal, and I want to acknowledge that, my own failings in that regard as we create a community where we can all feel comfortable sharing stuff.
I appreciate it. I mean, I wasn't really offended. I just was trying to, show you two what I have to deal with, because sometimes what is said in jest to me as a woman isn't really quite so funny. You know what I mean? It's a jab. It's like a poke. And I'm not talking about now like ribbing and stuff, but I'm just telling you how women get. And you guys don't understand that, you know what I mean? I told Philip, in this, in the training process and learning, women have a hard time getting men to even talk to them, to help them, if they can't make money on them, sleep with them, or, have something to eat. Like, those are, you know what I mean? And we get put in those buckets and there's nothing else for us. So we're constantly fighting for a place, you know what I mean? And to even just to be at the place of learning. So it's just kind of weighs on you sometimes. But at this point, I'm pointing it out. I'm good. I'm super happy. Life is,
you're
like
a superhero in the field.
I've done the work. And, what's funny is Chuck, you're talking about basketball, of course, I'm a girl. I'm a 𝐀𝐫𝐭𝐒𝐜𝐢𝐞𝐧𝐜𝐞𝐖𝐞𝐤𝐥𝐲. Because, they didn't even have girls' sports until I was 12. I was a better athlete than the boys, but there was nothing for me to play. I had to watch. So, now to see women like playing at such a high level, and I see the grind that all the athletes and all these people do, and I realize, like, I've done the same thing, just didn't realize it. You know what I mean? Like, I had to go through all the practice, all the training to even open myself to the possibility of learning other things, which is now I'm like, well, I don't want to keep it to myself. Somebody said to me yesterday, don't you want to keep all the stuff you've learned so it's, beneficial to you and your market? And I was like, no, I'll be blessed. I don't want people to struggle as much as me, and I really want people to be helped. So I'm older. I think that'll be a good thing, and I think you guys are on a good track.
What Caitlin Clark shows to the audience, to me, is that, okay, now you've got women's sports, and now you can see the shitty women. You can see how they tear down each other. Like, it's not a gender. There's just different humans.
The same dance, right?
Yeah. Right. You have somebody who's actually achieving a lot, doing great things, and there are people like you're nobody until somebody is hating on you. And I think a lot of people don't want to work through that, especially in trial law. And sometimes more, I've seen with my 3 daughters, very sensitive to criticism early on a process, and so they kind of quit because they'd rather quit than be kind of pointed out as doing something different than the group. And it's devastating because they have such huge potential, and they just don't have that armor that says I don't hear potential criticism that like my son might have or my idiot buddies might have. They just kind of keep walking in that direction. They don't listen to any criticism. All of a sudden they're at a destination.
Trudge.
Charles, what do you see in the context of teaching the difference in some cases, or some of the struggles that you've helped some younger females with it?
Well, when Leela was talking, the one thing I was thinking about was a Michael Jordan quote about, he said one time, if you saw how hard I worked, you wouldn't be as impressed with my results. You would just know that it was coming because of how hard I worked at it. And so I think, Philip, you're right about how we put people into buckets, and it's like, well, it's a woman thing, or that's a male thing. And it's not, it's a personality thing as much. And I think that we've gotten away from, I don't know if we ever had it. I'll say we got away from it, but I don't know. It's like, when did it start to be not okay to work really, really hard and have a singular focus on doing something, even if you're not succeeding the way that other people think? Like, other people think you're not succeeding the way you should if you work that hard. I mean, how many times have I heard from people, you work too hard? I'm like, okay, but that's for you, not me. Like, this is how hard I want to work, and this is my focus, and this is what I want to do. And you may think it's wrong, but you're not me. So fuck off. I mean, it's like, what the choices that I make are my choices for a reason, and that's what I want to do. And so when I see other people complain about, they don't get their shot, it's like, well, keep going. You haven't worked hard enough. Because I've been in those situations too, where I thought I was going to speak at a program, and then I get overlooked. I have the last spot at speaking at a program, and I for a half a second, I'm like, this is kind of bullshit. I should be somewhere else. I should be higher up on the list. But then I'm like, just do it and get up there and kill it, even if there's 10 people in the crowd, and say what you need to say, and just keep doing it. And there's stories like that all over the place. We just don't focus on them. Instead, we focus at the people that are at the top, and we go, oh my God, they're so lucky and they're so good. And no, they worked like crazy. And if they're not saying that, then they're lying to you, and go find somebody else who will be honest with you.
I love the basketball metaphors. I was listening to a Kobe thing yesterday, in fact, and this is where I want to help in my role. Like, I'm not known as the most touchy-feely person up front, but for people who I get to know, like, I'll die for them, and I want to make them better. And I've taught a lot of youth and business owners and females how to act with more confidence and all that. And so, like, I feel like you have to kind of push a bit of scar tissue to have difficult discussions so people can level up. But when I was listening to Kobe yesterday, this thing from Kobe, when he first got called up in the first year, I think he missed 3 shots in the last 2 minutes.
They were air
of
balls.
The most important game, right?
They were air balls in the playoffs.
They were actual air balls. And he's the biggest up-and-comer guy, the superstar. And after the game, he's sitting on the bench with his head down. And when he eventually goes by the reporter goes to him, I noticed you're over there where you're feeling devastated because you missed those thoughts. And his response was, what do feelings have to do with it? He goes, I was just thinking about what I did wrong so I can be better next time. And that's kind of what I want to, in a way, on this journey, we have to acknowledge what we experience. But I just thought that was an interesting thing. Like, what do my feelings have to do with it? Like, it's just about getting better.
He was 18. He was 18 when that happened.
I was just going to say that, like, if you're a real trial lawyer, you've lost.
Mm-hmm.
And when you lose,
gut-wrenching,
devastating, gut-wrenching. And what do? You double down, like, work harder. You're like, if you really want to be,
if you're an actual trial lawyer, if you're a real trial
lawyer, you're like, oh shit, I got punched in the nose and I lost, and I'm not having that happen again, right? And then you just got to get up and keep going. And so,
what I think the superpower is, we can kind of help people. I was just thinking about it. I love meeting those people who can always kind of stay positive, and it's a journey to be that good human being. But the way you describe it, we go into these courtrooms where lawyers are always, they think they have to be aggressive to be strong, and judges are always trying to point out how you're not good enough. And so we're just constantly in this world of, like, never feeling really good enough, no matter how many years we've been doing it. And there's always a judge who wants to criticize you, always a lawyer from a firm or a bigger firm that wants to make you feel stupid. We're always in this environment. And where do we get the teaching and the training to build the scar tissue? You know what I mean? Like, we just go from law school, we're told, oh, you're smart, and then you go out there and then you're constantly insecure. But I'd love for us to be able to build a tribe that you run a good case, you lose, and a judge mocks you, but you can just smile because you know you're a bigger person. We understand where we are in the journey, that it's, you know what I mean? Like, and somebody making you feel small, that person is actually miserable, right?
Yes.
Right.
I've had that epiphany working with these lawyers on the defense, and I'm like, oh my God, you
Yeah,
are miserable.
you
Oh,
are.
you poor thing. So I have a case where the defense lawyer's yelling at me, right? Every deposition, just yelling at me. And I would just lean forward and say, we're not married. Stop yelling at me. You can't yell at me. Okay. And like it it caused him to, like, he stopped yelling at me. Not in that moment, but eventually he started being nice. Like he's taken me to dinner. Like he
Mm,
realized, like, I'm not gonna shake her. You're talking about like the men, like, I'm not
yeah.
gonna shake her, so I better be nice. And then maybe that'll work.
I want to get Chuck in on it, but I just want to share this element because when I've taught some female entrepreneurs like how to feel more comfortable in a male marketplace, I'm like, first of all, like, stop being hypersensitive to offense, because most people, it's kind of Hemlin's law, don't attribute to malevolence what can adequately be explained by incompetence, right? So most people aren't really, there are those people out there, but most of the time people are just in their own head, they don't know. But I've done this with my daughters and these people, is when it works so beautifully, and it ties into what you're saying. If there's somebody at work who's kind of being inappropriate, it's usually an insecure man. If they're saying something or talking to you down, usually that is an insecure man. A secure man doesn't do that. But try this out. And you just did a version of this. I just tell them, when somebody does that, look them in the eye, walk up to them and get 1.5 inches closer than normal space, and just stare at them in the eye and go, "Are you okay?" And you will watch the person. I've seen this multiple times. The male will physically shrink and run away, right? Because what you've done is taken your female energy, and rather he expects you to withdraw into, "Oh my God, you're mansplaining. Oh my God, there's this. Oh my God." Just walk up, look right in the eye. Are you okay? And just watch him crumble, and then he will be your best friend after that. There's a hierarchy that exists in genders and between genders, and most insecure men cannot stand feminine energy in their space. Like, they're uncomfortable with it. They weren't hugged enough
Especially
as a
strong,
child. They can't
especially
fucking do.
strong women.
Yeah. No, especially, but anyone, you just look at it, right? Like, so that's one way to deal with any kind of bully. You just walk up and get in their space, look them in the eye, and ask them if they're okay.
Yeah,
Charles, how
because
have you dealt with that?
bullies don't like bullies, and I think there's bullies on both sides of the V here. I mean, there's plaintiff lawyers that are big time bullies, and there's defense lawyers who are big time bullies. And I think that a lot of times when I see the defense lawyers that start to try to bully me, I'm like, oh, this works on everybody else. That's why you're doing, like, this is your only shtick. This is all you got. And when it doesn't work, you write the memo to the insurance company and say,
Mhm.
we got to settle this case. We got to get rid of this thing because this guy's crazy. It's like, no, I'm not going to get bullied by your dumbass. And that's a lesson for sure for young guys. Because I think one thing that Kobe did talk a lot about is that you can learn to be competitive. You can learn to have that driven spirit. I think with Michael Jordan, when I was growing up, there was this impression that it was just him. And it is a lot of just him with Jordan. But with Kobe, he talked a lot about how his journey of learning how to be that killer and that Black Mamba uh, persona that he took on. And so we need to talk about that too. I mean, Philip, I think that's a place where you can really help in this space, is coming from a special forces military, is like, you've got to learn how to, some of the crazy things you told me about, the pool exercises that you guys would go through, and the team building things, and the going to exhaustion, all that stuff, is learning how to be competitive and learning how to be somebody who's not going to, that, or somebody that you want in the trench with you. So how do we learn that stuff? How do we get better at that stuff? And then what is the goal? I think is something that we can really bring that other people aren't talking about.
Well, resilience is kind of the new currency in today's fragile world where everybody is ready to take offense. You know what I mean? But building resilience is how anything survives and succeeds, right? It's not letting the bastards grind you down, as Bono said in that great song. But it's hard to build resilience with younger trial lawyers now who are coming through schools with safe spaces, parents who, got them grades for them, you know what I mean? Like, and because they're smart and they went to a school with the right names, now they're entitled to performance, and then they get out in the real world and they don't have mentorship.
I love those guys. I love it when I get those folks on the defense side because they're smart, but they will buckle for sure. They will, and their puffing is just puffing and it's fake. You can see them coming.
Yeah.
I think.
I didn't take their course on writing angry, tough letters.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
and that's
so what I was going to say is what's funny is that I have come into that where I kill them with so much kindness. I literally have these defense lawyers now who are cheering for me, who are happy for what I'm doing when I tell them like what my goal is to bring this to the world, and it's just changed the energy. There's none of that like it's amazing. Like I'm just not angry. I probably was when I was younger. Now, they like one of the guys literally said, "We need to get a case." I had to talk to him about something. We need to get a case together. I really like having something with you.
It's funny how it transforms. But like the SEALs, the SEALs that succeed often chant this mantra when they're shivering in the ocean and feel like quitting. Every time they have this mantra they say in their head: "Looking good, feeling good, ought to be in Hollywood." And they just keep repeating it. And when I coached a girls' soccer team, my daughter's soccer team, I took that and I shared it to them. I'm like, whenever you feel like quitting, whenever you feel down, whenever somebody in school, just keep saying to yourself as you're walking through the hallways, "Looking good, feeling good, ought to be in Hollywood." You just kind of make yourself impenetrable to small people, attacking you. But it's funny that they would use it, but it worked with a high school soccer team as well. And now they're adults, they come up to me and they're like, "Looking," and they just sing that to me, like in the mall. It's like such a cool thing. But I think lawyers could benefit from having a community where we talk about this stuff and say, hey, this is how we build resilience, or, a shield from all of the pressures that sit on our shoulders.
And I think that gets back to the mindset work, like the mindset course that I was telling you guys I'm taking. Like it's really that I realized like, oh, I can really choose what I'm going to think about, how I'm going to feel. And once you realize, wait, I don't have to be responding, it's like it's just a shift that makes a change in everybody else.
So I want to pivot quickly, because I want to get to this before we run out of time. But one of the reasons why we brought Leela onto the podcast is she is actually a pioneer in the whiplash soft tissue injury case area. And we mentioned it. It's because she cared about these clients. And it's kind of funny that, this vulnerability can turn into a strength, but because you actually genuinely care about your clients, probably more than most billboard lawyers out there, the ones who had this pain that was tough to prove, you actually cared enough to work through it. And then by building relationships with doctors and coming up with a structure, you're actually now 5xing or 10xing the value of these cases people think are throwaways. And you created the Soft Tissue Injury Institute, and now you're talking about it. Tell us a little bit about what you did to transform this area and how it could impact the lawyers who are listening across the country.
Well, like I said earlier, I went on this journey, and like I left it with the neurosurgeon. He didn't know, he couldn't tell us like what to do for her or even how it happened in the crash. And then I just like talked to anybody that would talk to me, and then just finally found some imaging. I found I had a doctor do a fake image on my client. Like I paid $700 for this man. He didn't own the machine. He just said it was a digital motion x-ray. And then I didn't understand it because it didn't make sense because it was a fake. But I didn't know until I finally found the guy who developed the digital motion x-ray. And I literally talked to the man. He told me about what he was doing. And I made flight reservations that day and flew down to him to see him the next week. And the best part is my journey to learn the medicine. Believe it or not, it's actually helped me personally, because he did the digital motion x-ray on me and discovered that I had problems, and I'd been having problems. We were able to see it, and he sent me to a doctor, an upper cervical chiropractor, who fixed me. I had orthopedic shoes and leg length discrepancy, and I had all these things. I walked out of there without those issues. No leg length discrepancy. Had to run out in my socks and buy new tennis shoes. And like, it's changed my life. And then I realized, like, oh shit, this works. This all makes sense. And then from there, then we found a neurosurgeon who like got this upright MRI, and we were able to see that this woman not only had this syrinx, but she had spinal cord impingements. And it explained everything when everybody had said, well, we don't know what to do for her. Threw some pain medicine at her. And so since then, I'm even met more of the doctors, and they've all been so happy to share and help. And they're living in a world where nobody really kind of wants to talk to them, even though, like, once you find them, if they help you. But now I've figured it all out, and I can tell you the steps, right?
And why I think this is amazing is the long tail. Most personal injury lawyers have lots of these soft tissue injury cases, and they're hard to settle, and they're hard to try. And so it's hard to learn how to be a trial lawyer, because they were hard cases to win because of the lack of objective evidence. And I think, honestly, if we were to take Charles's case structuring and put them onto what you've learned, you can take the value of plaintiff personal injury practice and triple it and make people much more profitable with less work. So without getting into too much detail, because we don't have tons of time, but so the audience understands, what resonated with me is when people have chronic pain from whiplash, there's nothing you can see on a static imaging. But when you do a mobile MRI, and it resonates to me because I've sprained my ankle 10 times badly in the military. So my ligament on my ankle is horrible. It always goes over. I have mobility, it cracks. And what it shows, the mobile imaging, is that the ligaments on your neck that hold your spinal cord stable, when they get stretched, they never go back to normal. And so now you have movement in your spinal cord that can impinge the nerves. So now with the mobile imaging, you can have an objective piece of evidence that can say, no, literally, this person's neck ligaments are now stretched to the point that they're not the same, and that's why they're having this chronic pain. They're not faking it. And then the imaging combined with your doctor's experts, you're now getting 7-figure verdicts on cases that were valued at 20 grand. And that's spectacular. And you paved the way to that. And if I've been telling you for a long time, I want a book, I want you to provide a course, maybe we can do it through the Justice College, where people can learn how to prosecute a soft tissue injury case to get those results.
And I want to show it as a beyond reasonable doubt case. I want you to, show it objectively, explain the medicine. I even have, anyhow, I apologize. I get so excited because I think, it's everybody needs to know. And it is life-changing for your clients, for the case, and make these insurance companies be responsible for the debt they created by hurting your client.
Well, and if I can, Leila, I think there's a huge lesson in what you just said, because you said you prove your cases beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's extremely valuable for people in the civil space to understand that in order for you to get a fair value for the case, you have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt.
Exactly.
You can't. When's the last time you won a verdict at 51%? It doesn't happen. And I used to argue with lawyers all the time about, in voir dire, I don't talk about the burden of proof. I don't talk about it because I don't care, and the jury doesn't care. I'm going to prove my case beyond a reasonable doubt, and I don't care if I stand up there and go, the law is that we just have a feather more than them and we win. And it's like, no, that's not the way human beings think. It's not. And that's a huge lesson, I think.
It also fits on the Justice College theme that we're building, that we want to redefine ourselves not as kind of what we've been put into the box of ambulance chasers, mass tort evil villains, but we're redefining ourselves as kind of corporate or civil prosecutors who are out there prosecuting corporate wrongdoing or individual wrongdoing and using beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what prosecutors have to operate with. Right? It's not a shortcut to just advertising to get easy cases and settling them. We're actually prosecutors for justice in society, but on the civil context when there's no criminal option. And I think you're changing people's lives with that soft tissue industry.
And Philip, let me give an example of that, right? Because 51% in a whiplash case would be what most people do, which is they come in with an MRI, they have a chiropractor testify, and the client gets up on the stand and says, I'm hurt. That's 51% of a neck whiplash case. Beyond a reasonable doubt is going an extra mile to get a motion x-ray, to get an animation, to get an accident reconstruction, to do the things that prove the case. Like, it wasn't just because you see a bump on the back of the bumper doesn't mean that the frame of the car wasn't bent. So go prove that the frame of the car was bent, that there was much more force going on here.
Can I tell you? I don't do that. We don't have those in Virginia. We don't. So I don't even. I'm like, let's not talk about the car. Like, literally, I had a lawyer, same situation, stand up with the picture, and talk of the back of the car, and I told the jury in closing, he's like Vanna White. Look at him. We're here to talk about this person. What happened to the man? Who it was inside, who already had surgery before. So I'm just telling you, I don't even look at that. I'm telling you, let's look at the person. And I even have a framing of, like, what do specialists do? They, look at this imaging, and it's different imaging, a little bit different than what you're talking about. And they look at it, they see it, and then they know the diagnosis. Like, look, see, no, like, boom. And that's how doctors know what's going on inside the body. So when the defense expert says, well, they should have gotten better, I told a judge the other day, well, if should have is the standard, because it was just for an arbitration, if should is the standard, then I should have been a supermodel. And it just sort of,
Yeah, I think that fits into the structuring the case we went over, Charles, as well. Like, when you know what the defense is going to say, right? They're going to focus on the car. Then you have this, so the kind of structuring the case model on top of how Leila has pioneered this new path to objective evidence that allows you to get to beyond a reasonable doubt is game changing. And I think for a lot of the lawyers spread across the country who have these cases, Leila's contacts are in the bio of the podcast. Reach out. I can't think of anybody who would be a better mentor or somebody to talk to if you're struggling with these types of cases, or even the issues that we talked about today. Maybe as a wrap up, Leila, you could kind of share with us and Chuck, who are the type of people who you think are out there that need help? How can we connect with them? You know what I mean? Other than the conference circuit, and how do we make them feel comfortable joining our community?
You're asking me or Chuck?
Yeah.
Me? Yeah. Well, I think that what we need to do is get the word out, because the older lawyers are sort of stuck in their ways, because literally a buddy of mine, we do cases together. We talk every day. He tried a case like a week or two ago, and he did it the old way. He wouldn't listen to me. And he got like $15,000. Okay? And finally he's like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I kind of think like getting those people is beyond, like if you're a young lawyer, like they have young lawyer courses, they have young lawyer seminars, like, and this, get the young lawyers and say, like, we got a different way, like, come talk to us. So, and I don't know, I haven't really, that's what I think, Philip. Okay.
Charles, what are you seeing at the Justice College level in terms of the people that you've been teaching recently? Are they, are lawyers happy? Are they growing at the way they, like, what are you seeing in the associates out there in your experience?
Probably a bad week to ask me that, but here goes. See a bunch of people that care more about their feelings than care about winning and putting in the work. They want to, like, they would rinse and repeat what Leila just said. Okay, every soft tissue case, I'm doing this, and this, and that's it. And there's no more thought. And it's just, this worked for Leila, I'm going to do this on every soft tissue case I have. And you're like, that's not the lesson. That's not what we're talking about. And there's no shortcut to, like, you have to analyze the case. You have to talk to the client. You have to dig in and figure out what happened so that then you can figure out, how do I prove it? How do I prove, do I believe this person? Am I willing to go fight for this person? And be honest, right? You got to sit down with the human being and say, is it worth my time? And is it worth this client's time for me to fight for them to the death and try to get an amazing result out of this case? And if it is, then you go crazy on that case and you work it until you get what you need. But I don't see that in a lot of associates. I think some people are hungry for that. And that's what my hope is with Justice College, is that there's enough people out there that are going, there's something else here. I'm not getting it from these conferences. I'm not getting it from the CLEs. And I need somebody who's got concrete steps for how do I improve that aren't going to just tell me everything's cookie cutter. Just go get an x-ray, go get an MRI, go talk to this. Like, that's not what this is. This is how do I get better as a lawyer and invest in myself instead of investing in Google ads.
Hopefully we get grassroots movement because, I don't think people put in a Google search. I don't know what the right term is so that you can find a community. I think you have to be out there and searching it. So people who refer, just refer people who are looking to it and spread it by word of mouth. I know we got an upcoming course coming up from Chuck on how to structure a case that I think anybody who has a practice in plaintiff law should look at, because you've just essentially giving away tens of thousands of dollars of content that if I had when I was
years of my life and years of my mentors' lives. But yes,
yeah.
Right.
If I had that when I started, it would change my life. So
What I was going to say is that you take Chuck's structure with my imaging, with the process and the future treatment, which I haven't even gotten to, okay, which is where you actually really end up helping these people because you get them out of pain. So, and I found new stuff for that too. So that you put all that together, and then you almost have, I can't say you have a formula, but you have a structure that allows you to feel better about moving forward with, all these cases and not be afraid. And, your chances of winning are significantly increased at this point. So we should marry, Chuck.
propose to me on a podcast.
marrying your sister.
I did.
I love you, Layla.
It's just a marriage of convenience.
Metaphorically, man. Okay.
Marriage of convenience.
I will be neither of your mistresses. All right. Well, on that note, with some good laughter, we've got another podcast done. If people are interested in connecting with the Justice College, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can connect to Charles, Philip, or Leela with our contacts below, and we welcome your comments. Please like and share, and we'll see you the next time. And get ready for the upcoming course that we're launching on structuring a case. It'll be amazing. Leela, thank you for coming.
Really good to see you guys.
Thanks, Layla.